Yeah, but no, doing well, and boy, that was quite a guest. It was the thing I always find so fascinating about some of these guests is that like there'll be portions of their talk that like I resonate with so well, and then there'll be other portions of the talk where it's not even just that I don't connect with it. Like I have like reasons to doubt it. You know what I mean? And to me, it's always interesting, like how I think what she said about these experiences being personal is something that really needs to be explored at a deeper level, because I think there's really something to that.
Well, the one thing that I have said on this show before, and I think you and I have said it in conversation passing, the one thing that I've learned a lot of that I didn't really know coming into this 7 years ago was that the phenomena seems to hit all of us at a different pace, different time, and in different ways. And this is where, when people say, well, where's your proof? Where's your evidence? You don't know when it's going to happen. You don't know how it's going to happen. Is it going to happen in the middle of the night while you're sleeping? Is it going to happen when you're driving your car through a countryside, because you want to go for a picnic somewhere? Or maybe you're on your way to a golf course and you get hit there. I mean, you just don't know when it's coming. That's that's the interesting part. Oh, you muted yourself, John. You muted yourself. You are muted.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. But I mean, I mean, there's definitely some crazy stuff going on right now. But yeah, let me get to my notes here. Um, yeah. So, whoops, wrong notes here. Oh, there we go.
Where are you going to
Uh,
take us? Where are you going to
yeah,
take
yeah,
us
yeah.
tonight?
So a couple of different places, and some of this stuff is stuff we're going to talk about. Some of this stuff are more encouraging for you guys to go do some research on your own. But essentially, it's to me we're reaching this point now where we're starting to see things getting. We're going into a parallel portion of this, where essentially you have many different threads progressing, and in different ways, in their own ways, which is awesome, because now you have this replicative effect. In that, the first thing I want to talk about is your friend Daniel Otis coming out with a nice little report of a little incident that happened on. Let's see, when was it? It was March 29th. So a very recent case involving NORAD, and it's not, there wasn't anything specifically about this case that I found really interesting. Some of the back and forth that happened in some of the dialogues that were of people debating it, what I would almost argue was kind of more interesting, is the way people were looking at it. But what I like about this, and what I want to draw attention to, is that this should be normal, right? Like the way Daniel Otis is approaching this, the way this case is being handled, we should be seeing a ton of these. These should be happening all the time. Like this should be this is a fantastic example of how this sort of reporting should be done, and how this sort of information should be getting out. Now, beyond this, now you can decide, okay, what other parties want to get involved and investigate it further. But having this point, this is just, mainly, I honestly just want to give a nod to Daniel to say, hey, man, this is great. But I also want to find out, being that you do have a relationship with him at some level, had you heard anything about this case? Was this anything that piqued your interest?
You know what? This is new to me. I didn't get a chance to read Daniel today, but the fact that he has brought out another story from NAV Canada, that they notified NORAD about some sort of bright orb in the sky, is
Mm-hmm.
always good news when it happens.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, and that's the thing, is it was a very it's a very dispassionate, just common sense sort of report, and as you said, bright orb in the sky, and like I said, to me, this is just I love the fact that it was so recent, but I also loved it as just this really nice example of the type of reporting that I would like to be seeing, like all over the place from every country. Like this is awesome.
Well, I mean, it also goes to show that it's the way they're reported too, John. Like Canada doesn't go to the the military gets the reports. I mean, don't forget these are also the reports that are deemed non-classified. There are a lot of classified reports up here that I'm sure will never see the light of day. But I mean, you're right though. I mean, these type of reports don't hurt. They enhance the research of the phenomena, and we do need more of them. I think you're very, very correct on that. And the unfortunate part about it is the reporters who are doing these reports are not getting them into mainstream, John. They're getting them onto the internet, which is fantastic, but there's still a giant chunk of the population in North America who still views television, newspapers, and radio as a major source of getting their news, and
Yes, but
it would
the
be
only thing
nice.
no, I agree with you. But the only thing I would add to that is that I think that those sort of news delivery systems are very reliant upon this model where they have some background on what it is. They have some hypotheses on what's going on, and they have some ability to get some answers. And in this case, none of those things exist. And so I also think that this is a story that's in such an early form that it's not really palatable to those kind of media streams. Now, if this coming out this way triggers 4 or 5 reporters to then dig into it, and one of them really pulls a good story out of it, then I think you take that to those major medias.
Well, I mean, the fact that, like, up here in Canada, where Daniel Otis is located, he's located out of Toronto. I mean, he also works in the newsroom of CTV television. Can't get this stuff on. The editors don't want it. True story.
So beautiful. That is so beautiful. Oh, Daniel Otis, sir, you are one of us.
He knows. He knows the
Wow,
struggle.
that is so funny, man. That is beautiful. That is beautiful. The guy that the Canadian government deems.
Hold it together, man.
That is beautiful. That is so beautiful. I love it. That is beautiful. Sorry.
Hold it together. But that's the reality of the story. The media up here does not want it. They're not even interested in it. They still have that old stigmatism of, UFO stories are the death knell of journalism.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's the sad part.
But I do also think, and I know I think Ross Coulthard has talked about this. I do think that there's also this challenge that that the media is kind of expects to receive content in certain formats, and we still haven't matured to a point where I think we're producing the evidence of what we're seeing in really digestible forms for these types of media forms, right? Ways that they want to digest them, that encourages them to digest them, I guess is what I'm saying.
Well, hey, if the reports keep coming out, eventually the journalists up here and the media outlets need to start taking note. That's what we can hope.
Yeah, agreed. And you're right. And you're right. A lot of these over a long period of time will have its own gravity.
No, and I agree. I very much agree. All right, what do you got for us next, George Knapp? Once again,
what I want to point out, this one is more of an advertisement for you guys to go to investigate, because there wasn't anything about it that specifically that I learned that really called me out. But what I loved about it, and the reason why I want everyone to go listen to it, is because we all have this problem where we get these same people being interviewed on these same channels, and you might get some acknowledgement of a continuous a story arc, but usually you don't. You get all this repetition, and sometimes you get different guests on different shows and different patterns. You might get something different, but this was Knapp and Kelleher being interviewed by Jay King, right? Who we know and love, and it was a nice take. It was a really fresh take. It was a different way of approaching their story, and you could just tell their comfort level was different with him, and it was just an excellent interview. And I think it's a great example of why you should really seek to listen to the people you like to hear interviewed by other people, people that you may not be familiar with, because sometimes you get a new angle, you get a new point of view, and it's super helpful.
Well, you know what? The one thing about it is when you hear somebody as professional as George Knapp going around talking about this, all it takes is one question to make the interview sound completely different than what the talking heads have been asked before. And they're ready for the same questions. They're ready for the same information to provide. And when you're a pro and you've already kind of memorized your script on what you're going to say and how you got it all going, it is something that you prepare for. But I mean, the one thing about somebody like George Knapp, and the reason why I am a fan of his, and I believe he will be attending our Vegas party here on the 23rd down in Las Vegas when all of us are down there for Spaced Out Radio. I really do believe that his intention of trying to get this story out is very good. I mean, he is old school journalism. They don't make him like that anymore. They really don't.
I concur. I could not agree more. I could not agree more. Yeah, no, I think you're totally right. And the thing is that's the thing, is that we just, in many ways, we've just gotten lucky. We've just gotten lucky that we've been able to attract people like Knapp, like Ross Coulthart. I mean, I don't want to even try to list the rest of them, because there's actually many that should be listed. But we've been super lucky. We've been super 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 lucky. So the next thing that I want to temper my excitement with this, because I recognize that a lot of you won't get as excited as I am. But essentially, the DURTS, okay, what does the acronym stand for? Anyway, the point is, these are the documents that were all the result of essentially ATIP and OSAP. This is basically the bulk of the papers that were essentially requested by all of the different researchers and all different groups to say, hey, in your field of expertise, what do you see happening 50 years out from now? They were not told it was part of a UFO program. They were not told it was part of a paranormal program. They were just told, hey, in your field of expertise, take it out 50 years and show us where you think we're going to be. And a lot of these papers have been classified. A lot of these papers have been difficult to get. Over time, we've been getting more and more and more of them. And essentially, another dump of them just came out. In this case, the link is to a nice collection that was put together by Alejandro Rojas. So thank you, sir, for doing that. But there's several other ones out there. Keith Basterfield is the one I usually go to for these sort of things. And that's actually where I got this link from, to be at first place. But the point is that if you like that level of technical detail, if you like geeking out on the physics, the defense aspects of it, if you want to read real papers, this is a treasure trove of information for you to just gnaw on for days. And I could not encourage you more to dive into them, because it really gives you a point of view of where we could be going in the near future, and it's incredibly exciting. You can kind of infer all the different tie-ins that you might think exist for different UFO programs and so forth, but they couldn't do it that way. They had to play it clean and tell them that it was all just research.
All right, John, I'm going to get you to hold on right there. We are going to continue with the Unbiased UFO Report with the fedora-wearing Jon Hudson. We have Shirky Poo's news coming up as well. Stay tuned. It's a jam-packed final half hour of Spaced Out Radio, returning right after this. All right, we're clear? Did you mute yourself?
Oh, no. Sorry. I was still looking for that that name of that organization that I wanted to mention. Oh, come on. Wow. The thing is though is as much as I do like Knapp's reporting abilities and so forth. I gotta say, like, and I think this is a really unfair aspect of the media world, and that is that I have to admit, like, I really think a lot of what I like about Knapp is his voice and his personality. And I can't even put my finger on exactly what it is I like about that, but it's like, like when he comes on, like coast to coast on a Sunday night, like I'm like a kid in a candy store again, man. I'm so excited, and it's like, and yeah, it is all of his abilities and his background and blah blah blah, but a lot of it is just it's the inner nature of George Knapp that he shares in his field, right? It's what he is that comes out in the way he does it, and that's really what I think what a lot of us like him for.
Makes sense. I would agree with that.
I'm always hesitant to talk about that that path of things because it it's to me it's kind of like to me it's kind of like if an engineer came to you with this incredible car that they designed and they talked about all the different features they put into it and you went, yeah, it's great, I like it because it's blue. It's just kind of like I don't want to like take away from the work that Knapp has done by just saying, oh, I just like him because of his voice. So that was my hesitation.
I hear you. I'm hungry.
I'm excited that we get to see you in a man bun.
I'm not 60,000. Man bun.
You agreed to that, dude. I have it recorded.
Did not agree to that. You were on drugs. Lots of heavy drugs.
You look so cute.
Thank you. You make me feel so warm and fuzzy.
I got to tell you, the skill of keeping a dialogue going that's even remotely interesting while trying to read questions and pick ones out to answer, no matter how many times I do it, I'm always impressed with how difficult that skill is. It's quite a challenge.
I want my apple. And I'm like an hour away from my apple.
What's your favorite kind of apple?
Red Delicious.
I recently got turned on to a one called Cosmic Crisp that I'm really, really, really liking.
I also like Ambrosia.
It's really funny. Like I'm amazed. Like I go to the grocery store here, and there are literally there are probably like 6 different types of apples available, and each of those are available in organic and non-organic.
We got 45 seconds here. I want to say a big thank you to Todd, Surf Jer, Amy, Hank, Simon, Allison, and Jeff for the awesome super chats tonight. I'll eat any apples there, Duke. I just love apples. And a big thank you to all of our new subscribers as we surpass 16,000 tonight. We really do appreciate that on our YouTube channel. Wow. You know what? I'm really starting to believe that the way things are going, we do have a shot at hitting 20,000 by the end of the year.
Of course we do.
I'm pretty pumped up about that. That would be fantastic. Fantastic. 10 seconds. We rounded third. We're heading for home tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for tuning on in to Spaced Out Radio. We very much value your listening ears. We want to remind you that if you miss portions of this show or others, check out our free archives at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot. Read Shirky Poo's Newswire. Check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. We continue on tonight with the fedora-wearing Jon Hudson and the Unbiased UFO Report, going over these documents called the DURTS. John, many of us out there in UFO land may not know what they're all about. Give us a warm-up.
So basically what happened was that at a point in time during the OSAP adventure, it was decided that that they would reach out to a number of experts in different fields and not mention anything about what the goals were or anything, and just go to them and say, hey, look, we want you to look out 50 years in your field and be speculative, but be careful. And basically show us where you think this is going, right? And in the end, we got, I believe it was 30, I believe, if I remember correctly, I believe there are 38. And I don't remember, I think we're up to 33 now. We're getting close. We're getting really, really close. And it's been fun kind of in this adventure because in some cases, they've been hard to get through normal means, but then if you found that professor and emailed him, he'd be like, oh, sure, I'll give you a copy. So it really kind of depended on a bunch of things. But essentially, these were some really advanced concepts. So, for example, DURT 18 is on traversable wormholes and stargates. DURT, let's see, the role of superconductors in gravity, quantum topology, negative mass propulsion. I mean, these are, essentially when this list came out, actually, there was a lot of reporters that kind of lost their noodles over it and were like really upset saying, why are we spending taxpayer dollars on all this wooey stuff? And it's like, no, it's just a paper, relax. But the thing is that it's kind of a funny thing that happened in that none of these people wrote these with any kind of UFO stuff in mind. But if you put yourself into the seat of say like Hal Puthoff, and now read these papers and now ask yourself, okay, if I was trying to figure out how certain UFOs behave certain ways, and I was trying to use this method to figure that out, who would I go to? Like, what fields would I be exploring? And you can start to kind of see, where some of this stuff maps like very obviously with the warp drive stuff, and may map less obviously with like metallic spintronics, which actually may end up being related to the metamaterials. So it's like I said, you could really bury yourself for a long time. I don't even know where I am at this point. I have not read through all of them yet. I mean, it's if you really want to go through them and understand them, it's a lift.
The purpose as to why the public should take note of these documents, for many of us in the UFO field, we're going to be like, hey man, like, why aren't you reading these? But for the purpose of the audience out there who's not into the UFO field as deeply as we are, why is this something that they should be paying attention about?
Okay, so where I would argue that people should be paying attention to it is that what this also is this is a bit of a blueprint to say, if we figure out what all these things we're seeing are doing, if we figure out all that physics, that is very likely to result in what these papers predict, right? Because these papers are predicting a rather optimistic view of future development, right? And so when people ask, Well, okay, so big deal. Aliens are here. Why do I care? How's it going to impact me? Right. Well, the way it might impact you is, being able to, society being able to really take advantage of superconducting, right? Being able to really actually, there's very few places that are actually, I mean, I think New York has a power line that's doing it now, but I mean, it's incredibly rare. And so there's a lot of these things that once they get productized, essentially, there is it's huge ability, and in many ways, this is a map of why you might care, because these are all the fields that are going to be impacted by those discoveries.
All right, now.
But with that said, let me caveat really. They're deep and technical, so they're not everyone's going to love them, right? Just to warn you.
All right, sounds good. Let's get right to the final topic of the night with you, my friend, where we are looking at. Let's see here. What do you have for us?
This
Daniel Pay and the Plasma Project.
This is going to be a difficult one to discuss, but I'm going to try. Okay, so what this is about is that for all of us that are primarily consuming research that other people do, we do maybe some of our own, but a lot of our research is reliant on others. The value that we can all add is when we start picking up distinct data points across many different things that start to kind of stitch together into story arcs that start to explain things. And a lot of times these things are very hard to find. And I think that we might have one here. I don't know this for sure yet. And so I wanted to just share it with everyone to see if who agrees, and if people are looking at it this way, and then where this might go. Because one of the challenges we have is that a lot of these concepts get very deep and then they don't go anywhere. And so if you look at the interview that Salvatore Pais just did with Kurt over at the TOE channel, he goes into some very specifics about certain things, but then he backs off when he starts talking about how the plasmas behave as they relate to the materials that are containing them. And there's certain places where it gets to the plasma level where he backs off a bit, and I can't talk about this, I can't talk about that. But some of the things he talks about in that plasma model actually start kind of dovetailing in a weird way to something called the Sapphire Project. It's SAFIRE, which is essentially a startup company that is studying the advanced science of plasma, and essentially some of the rumored, and they consult with a lot of the people from our community, like Hal Puthoff and so forth. And these, it's actually I think, I don't remember who it was that did most of the good work on the Sapphire Project. But if you reach out to them, they will send you like a quarterly report on their progress that I get from them. They're pretty nice. They have the government went in and kind of and secured part of their work, and so that's part of the reason why they have to be so careful. But the thing I'm getting at is that we look at the Foo Fighters from the
Right.
you look at the orbs, you look at, and then you start looking at what the Sapphire Project's looking at, because these are talking about orbs that self-organize, orbs that self-mold into certain forms and so forth, almost as if the orbs have some awareness of their own, right? And then you look at all the orb stuff, and then you start looking at the Sapphire Project, you start looking at Hal's involvement, and then you start looking at Salvatore Pais and his talk with Kurt. And the thing is that I don't know for sure. This is a very early set of tells. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to point it out to people, because to me, this is where things get fun, and this is where a lot of us can actually bring a lot of value to the community, because we all notice different tells through these different streams, and we can all tie them together in different ways and interpret them in different ways. This one I'm hoping is going to turn into something. I don't know that for sure. But this is a great example of the kind of thread that you want to pull on if you can find it.
I think that's kind of exciting about that, because when you get into plasma and you get into other sorts of chemicals and everything that goes along with the entire UFO ET phenomena, whether it's, something like Stefan Mikulik saw back in 1967 at the Falcon Lake incident, where he watched
Mm-hmm.
this craft, it looked like it was dripping metal, and we've
Mm-hmm.
heard that from other people as well. I mean, there has to be, John, some sort of indicator as to what these craft are made of, what their chemical compounds are, and how they are able to do what we are doing. So is that kind of the process of this type of forward scientific thinking?
Yes, because for example, one of the things that I've studied it for a long time is something called leaner, which is essentially a rebranding of cold fusion, right? And the process that which happens is still being argued. But one of the things that's been argued is that there's some sort of a plasma as a plasma tie into it. And one of the things that the sapphire people are finding is that there does seem to be, just like with leaner, a weird transmutability to it. And what I mean by that is that you can take two elements and get a third element out, right? So you can basically take something to with a linear reaction and produce it. So the result is it spits out uh, titanium or something. But it's more complicated than that. But the point is that you, because of the massive amount of energy being released, the whole idea is that you are actually transmuting in a weird way, like not like a philosopher's stone sort of thing, but kind of close. And so the thing is that if through the Sapphire project or some other project, we figure out that there's some sort of plasma configuration you can create where it occasionally drips a certain metal, that's it. We figured it out, right? Like if we can actually do something like that in a lab or in a field and actually get it to produce, say, okay, now to your exact point, now you got something.
That's why you're the fedora wearing Jon Hudson, always bringing the science and the woo to us, man. It's a nice, healthy combination that you bring.
Oh, thank you, sir. I appreciate it. It's a lot of fun. I appreciate being here.
Well, you know what? We got a couple more minutes left before we have to ship off out to the news here.
Yeah.
So, in my conversations with people, we have looked into the aspects of the entire propulsion system. Everything seems to be around propulsion. How are they flying? How are they having anti-gravity without wings, without any sort of
Because that's safe.
engine? Okay, where does the idea of plasma and everything kind of fall in regards to these types of phenomena?
Okay, so that's another place where we have this really cool possible story arc, right? Because if you look at what Dr. Paez talks about in his interview, what he talks about is this idea of and in his patent is a dual layered hull, and in between the space between the two holes, there is this plasma, and in his design, it's being done through a resonance field, I believe. I think it's this frequency manipulation. But what's really interesting about his model is that if you then go back to what Edgar Fouché claimed how the TR3B worked, and then you go back to the very early story from the 50s that I believe Fouché also is one of the original tellers of, about the large rig that was kicked down it was like a large airplane enclosure, and they thought it didn't work, and they were mad, and so they kicked it, and basically this large metal enclosure like lifted off the ground and skipped down the room, and to the shock and amazement of everybody. And you can start seeing how you start tying these all things together. And so yeah, it could be that not only is plasma might be an incredibly important thing as it comes to what we're seeing as far as orbs and so forth, but it might be that mastering plasma as a state of material is required to get a plane of any sort to behave like the ones we're seeing.
Wonderful.